Tune into Nice Radio every Saturday at 7:30 a.m. for A View from the Outside, hosted by Brereton Horne. A View from the Outside takes a look at key issues affecting St Vincent and the Grenadines and gives a global perspective on how these issues are viewed. Host Brereton Horne will examine a variety of topics to enlighten, stimulate debate, and explore solutions. Hear the facts, hear the real-life stories, hear A View from the Outside. Join Brereton Horne at 7:30 a.m. every Saturday on Nice Radio for A View from the Outside.
This society needs a spectacle. It might help us to see some people.
On A View from the Outside this week being the 24th of April 2021, we look at extreme, E-X-T-R-E-M-E, extreme, with the view being that as St Vincent and the Grenadines continues to be ravaged by the extremities of the erupting volcano, Soufriere, and many Vincentians are being displaced. It seems that the Prime Minister of St Vincent and the Grenadines has made an admission of convenience that there is extreme poverty in the country. The Cambridge Dictionary defines the adjective extreme as very severe or bad. And the Merriam-Webster Dictionary states that extreme means exceeding the ordinary, usual, or expected. Those definitions tell us that if something is extreme, it is severe or dire. If something is extreme, it is bad or grim. If something is extreme, it is beyond what is ordinary or what is ordinarily acceptable. So, we on A View from the Outside say that when the Prime Minister of St Vincent and the Grenadines addressed the United Nations, the UN, earlier this week and talked of extreme poverty existing in St Vincent and the Grenadines, his reference has to be placed in that context. The Prime Minister gave the keynote address at the launch of the UN's global appeal to raise almost $30 million to help rebuild St Vincent and the Grenadines after the effects of the erupting volcano. He, referring to what exists, or what he says exists in St Vincent and the Grenadines, said in that most recent address to the world, he said that we have extreme poverty and we have vulnerabilities. And we there meaning St Vincent and the Grenadines. Over 5 years ago, in October 2015, when addressing the said United Nations, Dr. Ralph Gonsalves told the world then that over the past 15 years, St. Vincent and the Grenadines has made progress in the eradication of poverty. Yes, that was 5 years ago. Also, those who followed the last general elections campaign in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, as recent as November 2020, will remember the lengths to which Dr. Gonsalves and his regime went to deny that poverty, let alone extreme poverty, exists in the country. Yes, one will remember the pains to which they went to try to convince anyone listening that the dire statistics revealed by the Honorable Daniel Cummings and the rest of his party, that the poverty of an extreme kind in St. Vincent and the Grenadines were unfounded and untrue. One will remember also that those statistics were obtained by way of leaked information from the country poverty assessment, which was conducted in the country since 2018, as reported in the newspaper of Friday, the 23rd of April 2021, just yesterday, but of which no official report was ever published or released. One will remember too that those statistics revealed that a significant number of Vincentians are existing below the poverty line, and that many are indigent and poor, a phrase or term which the Prime Minister himself used once when he disparagingly referred to one of his constituents who dared to oppose him. So when one looks at what was said by Dr. Gonsalves in 2015, and also by him and his party in November 2020, one has to ask, when and how did he come to the realization when he revealed recently that there is extreme poverty in St Vincent and the Grenadines? And it therefore begs the question of whether his admission to the world is one of convenience. While no one in their right mind will oppose donors from contributing to the Vincentian people and the current plight which envelops the nation as it contemplates and embarks on rebuilding from the volcanic eruptions, the opportunity ought not to be lost to ask the pertinent questions of Dr. Gonsalves. When did he realize that there is extreme poverty in St. Vincent and the Grenadines? Were the Honorable Daniel Cummings and his team correct in revealing that such extreme poverty to which he, Dr. Gonsalves, now refers, are actually contained in the poverty assessment conducted by his government? If Daniel Cummings and his team, the Honorable Daniel Cummings and his team, were correct, why then did he, Gonsalves, and his regime not reveal such truth to the Vincentian people at that time? Is his current admission of extreme poverty one of convenience? Is it merely self-serving in order to attract aid? And based on what Mahatma Gandhi once said, when he said, poverty is the worst form of violence, is Dr. Gonsalves and his regime, they have to be asked, have they been exacting violence, extreme violence, on the Vincentian people? One would hope that whatever and by whichever method Dr. Gonsalves chooses to answer those questions, that he stops the contradictions to which he himself referred in that said 2015 UN address, when he said, and I quote, "I acknowledge that the world is a complicated place awash with contradictions." He must stop those contradictions. The Vincentian people do not want those contradictions at this time or ever. The Vincentian people want honest leadership. It is either St. Vincent and the Grenadines is in extreme poverty or it is not. The contradictions do nothing for the advancement of our people and for the image of the country. With that said, and as aid continues to pour into the country with and for the specific purpose to assist in relieving the people of extreme poverty, the opportunity has to be seized to call upon Dr. Gonsalves and his regime to provide accountability, to remind them that it cannot be business as usual, because the stories are already being told of the politicization and of the partisan nature of the distribution of supplies within the country. They must be reminded that the people, organizations, and countries in the regional and international communities, including Vincentians in the diaspora, who contribute to the plight of the Vincentian people at home in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, they do so, they contribute on the basis not of partisan politics, but on the basis of contributing to alleviating a humanitarian crisis which is existing in the country. They, Dr. Gonsalves and his regime, must be reminded that such aid, financial and otherwise, must be used to and for the benefit of the Vincentian people, including particularly going towards the rebuilding process and towards lessening the extreme poverty which he, Gonsalves, admitted exists in the country. The aid must go towards feeding and clothing the needy and the vulnerable. It must go towards health care of a sufficient and acceptable standard. It must go towards building a hospital or hospitals outside of the red zone. It must go towards assisting those in the Grenadines who have been neglected over the years. They must not be excluded from the recovery and rebuilding process. We, here on A View from the Outside, continue to stand in solidarity with all of our Vincentian colleagues, especially those who are displaced due to the extreme circumstances brought on by the eruptions of the Soufriere volcano. We call upon the government to live up to its responsibility to ensure that safety and security is provided for all those displaced and dispossessed. We urge every one of those affected not to lose hope, but to maintain resolve and to look forward to the rebuilding process. We urge you all, everyone of St Vincent and the Grenadines, those in the region and those in the international community, to hold Dr. Gonsalves and the rest of his regime accountable for the millions of dollars and other aid which they receive. Hold them accountable and take action to ensure that they work tirelessly to significantly reduce, if not altogether alleviate, the extreme poverty which he, Dr. Gonsalves, now finally admits conveniently, opportunistically, or otherwise exists in the country. And as you do that, as we all do that, let us remind Dr. Gonsalves and his regime of the words of Daisaku Ikeda, the Japanese Buddhist philosopher and educator, who said, I quote, "Extreme poverty threatens people's right to life itself and makes impossible the enjoyment of the right and freedoms essential to a humane way of life." We call upon Dr. Gonsalves and his regime to treat the Vincentian people, give them what they deserve at this time of crisis. Until next week, Justin and all of the listeners, this is Brereton Horne with A View from the Outside, with a reminder to send your feedback as usual to aviewfromtheoutside@hotmail.com. We also invite you to visit and like our Facebook page at A View from the Outside, and also visit and subscribe to our YouTube channel at JMB Horne. Justin